All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're talking about something really interesting from France, a parenting philosophy they call le cadre, which literally means the frame. And trust me, it's a huge departure from the kind of child-centered parenting a lot of us are used to.
Okay, so before we can really get what the frame is all about, we got to talk about the problem it's trying to fix. And that's this idea of the enfant roi, the child king. It's something a ton of parents today are really struggling with.
You know the model I'm talking about, right? Where the kid is at the absolute center of everything. Their wants, their schedule, it pretty much runs the whole household. The entire family's life starts to orbit around this one little person.
And this is where you get that enfant roi. See, when a kid gets used to being the center of the universe, what happens when they face frustration? It's tough. They can get super demanding because they just haven't had the practice of dealing with a world that doesn't bend to their will.
But here's the thing, there is another way. And the French approach, it's a really powerful alternative. Now, this isn't about being mean or super strict, not at all. It's all about being incredibly, unbelievably clear.
So the whole idea boils down to this one concept, le cadre, the frame. Just picture a picture frame. It provides a solid, dependable structure, right? And inside that frame, the child has all the freedom in the world to play, explore, and just be a kid.
Okay, let's really look at the difference here, side by side. With le cadre, the child isn't the star of the show. They're an important member of the cast. They're deeply loved, for sure, but they aren't worshipped. And the biggest thing? Their freedom has limits. It exists inside those clear boundaries we've been talking about.
So you're probably wondering, what does this frame actually look like in real life? Well, it's not some giant rulebook. It's really more about 3 core ideas that French kids just kind of absorb as they grow up. Yeah, these lessons are just part of the fabric of daily life. And they teach 3 super important things: perspective on where they fit in, how to compromise, and maybe the most important one, how to manage their own emotions. Okay, lesson number 1 is the big one. The message is basically, hey, we love you more than anything, and you are so, so important, but you're not the only thing. You're part of this family, this neighborhood, this whole world. And that right there teaches perspective. Next up is compromise. And this is huge. The kid learns, okay, I have a voice and people listen to me, but I'm not going to get my way every single time. Because, well, other people have needs and voices too. So no, you don't get to pick what's for dinner tonight, but we'll definitely think about your idea for Saturday. It's such a key lesson for getting along with others. And the third lesson is all about empowerment, which might sound strange at first. It's about validating their feelings. It's totally okay to be angry or sad, but also teaching them that it's their job to learn how to handle those big feelings. The world isn't going to magically make you feel better. So when your friend has to go home, yeah, it's sad. But a full-blown meltdown, that's not the way, because you're learning to manage it yourself. So what's the end result of all this? How does this actually shape a kid? Well, the outcome of Le Cadre is pretty amazing. You get these children who are often incredibly calm and really independent. And this quote here, it really nails the paradox at the heart of this whole thing. It sounds kind of backwards, right? Firmer limits make kids feel more empowered. But just think about it for a second. When a kid knows exactly where the walls are, they don't have to spend all their time and energy pushing to find them. They feel secure. And that security is what gives them the real confidence to go play and explore inside that safe space.
It all comes back to that frame. It creates this deep sense of security. When there's less negotiation, less chaos, and just a more predictable life, it literally helps a child's nervous system stay more stable. And what do you get? A kid who is just naturally calmer and more independent.
And here's the real takeaway. This is so much bigger than just a few parenting hacks. We're talking about shaping future adults. The whole point is to raise these small citizens who get it, who know that life isn't about plowing through everyone else, but about living with them.
So that leaves us with something to think about. This frame, it's not meant to be cold or harsh. It's supposed to be a warm, loving, and most of all, reliable structure. So the question for you is, what could a warm, strong frame look like in your home?
You know, when it comes to parenting, most of us have this kind of default setting in our heads. But what if a totally different worldview could, well, change everything? Today we're going to dive into the core philosophy behind French parenting.
So let's just start with a simple question that gets right to the heart of it all. Who's at the center of your universe? Seriously, think about it. The answer? Well,
It says a lot about your family's basic operating system.
For a lot of us, this picture probably feels pretty familiar. The child is the sun, and everything, I mean everything, revolves around them. Their schedule, their needs, their wants, the whole family is kind of like planets just stuck in orbit around them.
But the French approach, it just flips that whole idea on its head. In this model, the family is the sun. It's the stable, balanced center of the solar system. And the child? The child is a happy, well-adjusted planet moving within that system, not running the show. It sounds like a small change, but trust me, it's a huge shift in perspective.
All right, so let's dig in and explore what this different family universe actually looks like. It all starts with a really fundamental idea about a child's place in the family.
And here's the key thing to get. This isn't about specific tricks, like sleep training or what to feed your kids. Nope, it starts way before that, with this core belief. Your child is a cherished, vital part of the family, but they're not the central axis that the whole world spins around.
And holding up this whole worldview is a really beautiful concept that shapes everything. The French call it l'art de l'équilibre, or, the art of balance.
Equilibre, what does that mean? Well, it's this idea that for a family to really thrive, no single thing gets to swallow everything else whole. Yeah, parenting is a huge deal, but it's not supposed to completely wipe out your life as a couple or your own interests. It's all about finding a balance that actually works for everyone long term. And you can really see this équilibre thing in action. So in one common approach, the whole household just adapts to whatever the child wants. In the French approach, the child learns to adapt to the family's established rhythm. This means you shift from random snacking to structured mealtimes. You're basically moving from chaos to predictability. Now, this is not about being cold or rigid or anything like that. It's the opposite, actually. It's about creating a predictable world for your child. I mean, think about it. When kids learn early on that the world has a structure, that it doesn't just bend to their every impulse, they actually feel more secure. It builds real resilience.
Okay, so this idea of structure leads us to what might be the cornerstone of this whole philosophy. It's a concept the French call le cadre, which literally means the frame.
The Cadre it's kind of like this beautiful paradox. Just picture a frame for a painting. That frame, it's strong, it's firm. Those are the rules, and they don't bend. But inside the frame, total freedom. That's the child's space to play, to create, to be totally themselves.
And Pamela Druckerman, who wrote that famous book, Bringing Up Bebe, she really nailed it. She says, this structure doesn't feel restrictive to kids. In fact, it feels empowering. Because when you know exactly where the boundaries are, you have the confidence to act freely.
Let me give you a super simple example. The rule is bedtime is at 8 p.m., period. That's the frame. It's non-negotiable. But inside that frame, and the hour before bed, the child has total freedom. They can choose to read a book, do a puzzle, draw a picture, whatever they want. They're learning to make their own choices within that safe, clear structure. And honestly, that's the psychological genius of it. If a kid is constantly pushing and testing to figure out where the line is, it's stressful. It creates a ton of anxiety. But when they know exactly where the walls are, they can finally just relax. They can just play and be a kid in that safe space.
So where's all this heading? What's the ultimate goal of the frame in this whole way of thinking? Well, it's probably not what you're guessing. It's not about raising a kid who just obeys. It's about cultivating something way, way deeper.
Yeah, let's be super clear. The end game here is not blind obedience. It's not about creating a little soldier who just follows orders. The real goal is to nurture a child who is, in the French sense of the word, sage. Okay, so sage literally translates to wise, but it's so much more than just being well-behaved on the surface. It's about developing a true inner competence. It's about having the self-control and good judgment to navigate situations thoughtfully.
A sage child is one who demonstrates these core qualities. They can control their impulses, they can understand how other people feel, they can make sensible decisions, and they can manage their emotions. You see, this is about building character, not just controlling behavior.
All right, so let's start to pull all these threads together. You can see how this structured, balanced way of doing things really leads to some powerful long-term benefits for a child. And it all circles back to one key idea: the power of predictability.
When a kid's world is predictable, they're just less anxious. They don't have to run the show, so they can actually relax and become better observers of the world around them. Self-regulation isn't this constant battle. It just becomes a natural skill.
and respecting boundaries becomes second nature.
And this leads to the perfect metaphor for it all. The entire structure, the balance, the frame, it acts as a child's first shock absorber. It prepares them for the reality that the world won't revolve around them, which makes their entry into the social world a whole lot smoother. So we'll end with this thought. We often think of freedom as, the absence of rules. But what if the French are onto something? What if providing clear, consistent, and loving boundaries is actually the very kindest and most effective form of freedom we can give our children?
The surprisingly calm and really effective French approach to parenting and discipline. And it all centers around how a simple no can actually be one of the kindest things you can say.
All right, let's just jump right in with a scene that, well, if you're a parent, you're gonna know this one. It's a moment we've all been in.
So picture this. Your kid wants something they just can't have. A cookie right before dinner, another episode on the tablet, that shiny toy in the store, you know the drill. The French have a great word for this, a caprice. And before you know it, boom, full-on meltdown. Okay, so your first instinct might be to jump in, right? But the French philosophy says, hold on a second. It's not about winning a fight. It's about completely shifting your role from someone who reacts to someone who anchors. And at the heart of it is this phrase, c'est moi qui décide. It means, I am the one who decides. Now this sounds a little intense, doesn't it? But it's not about being a dictator. It's about being the stable, steady center of your child's world. They need that anchor to feel secure. And this really gets to the heart of a huge difference. We're talking about calm authority, not authoritarianism. One is about providing a firm but really loving structure. The other, that's about imposing your will with rigid emotional control. Think guide, not guard. So, how do you actually do this? Let's get into the practical side of things. Think of it as a toolkit for staying calm when things start getting, well, chaotic. And what's so cool about this toolkit is that it has nothing to do with yelling or punishments. It's all about using your presence calmly and quietly. All right, the first tool is probably the hardest because it goes against every instinct. What do you do first? Nothing. Seriously. You just pause. You wait, you watch for a minute or two before you even think about stepping in. And look, this isn't about ignoring your kid. Not at all. It's about giving them space. You'd be amazed how many little squabbles just fizzle out on their own. And more importantly, you're giving them a chance to figure it out, to learn how to soothe themselves. That is a skill they will use for the rest of their lives. Okay, tool number 2, le regard, the look. And we all know a look, right? But this isn't the angry death stare. It's super calm, super steady. It just says without a single word, okay, that's the line, we're not crossing it. And that brings us to the final piece, la voix, your voice. When you use the look, you pair it with a voice that's steady, low, and totally under control. No shouting, no sharp tones. You're literally modeling emotional regulation for them. They see you're calm, and it helps them learn to be calm too. So you've got the toolkit for presence. Now for the main event. How do you actually say no? How do you deliver a nom that's firm but kind, that ends the argument instead of starting World War III? See, in this mindset, non is a full sentence. That's it. It's said clearly without a hint of apology. There's no yelling, there are absolutely no threats, and this is the big one, zero negotiation. It just means the conversation is done. Now, you don't pull this out for every little thing. You've got to know when to use it. The French make a distinction between bêtise, that's just harmless kid mischief, totally normal stuff, and real misbehavior, things that are dangerous, disrespectful, or just a total meltdown. That's when you bring in the firm no. So the real target here isn't your kid's emotions. It's the caprice, that impulsive, I want it now demand. It's the child's belief that if they just get upset enough, they can change the rules of reality. That's what you're saying no to. And this is why you don't negotiate. I mean, think about it. Trying to reason with a screaming toddler isn't kind. It's just confusing for them. They literally don't have the brain power for it yet. It makes them anxious, and it totally messes up the whole parent-child dynamic. Okay, so we've got the tools for staying calm. We know how to deliver that kind, firm no. So what's the long game here? What's the ultimate goal? Because it's about so much more than just stopping one tantrum. It's so important to remember, this is not a battle of wills. You're not trying to win. The only goal is to get the house back to a calm, peaceful place for everybody. And every time you hold that boundary, every time you don't give in to the caprice, you're doing something incredible. You're building your child's emotional strength. You're teaching them how to deal with frustration, which is one of the most important life skills they can learn. So I'll leave you with this to think about. That firm, calm no, it might feel tough in the moment, but it's not a rejection. It's a hug. It's telling your child, I've got this. The world makes sense. You are safe, and I am here to keep you safe within these loving boundaries. You know, the one that's famous for raising these independent, super well-behaved kids. The ones who apparently don't throw their food. So how on earth do they do it? Let's find out. All right, so let's just jump right in with the big question, the one that honestly baffles so many parents outside of France. Why don't French kids throw food? I mean, it's a thing people really notice, and it's a clue that there's something much deeper, way more structured, going on with how they raise their kids. So, first things first, we've got to get this core idea down. In French parenting, these well-behaved kids, it's not some kind of magic. It's not something in the water over there. Nope. It's all the result of a really deliberate system. We're talking about training, not just crossing your fingers and hoping for the best. And this is the foundation for everything else. The belief is that French kids aren't just born different, they are trained, and it starts from a super young age. This consistent framework gets applied to, well, pretty much all parts of their life, but it becomes incredibly clear when you look at how they approach food. Okay, so let's talk about the golden rules of food. This is where things get really fascinating, seeing how all this training actually plays out at the dinner table. It's kind of like a masterclass in psychology and patience and structure, and it all kicks off with one single, totally brilliant rule. Seriously, this one rule is just pure genius. Right away, it completely diffuses that classic, dinner table power struggle. There's no forcing a kid to clean their plate, so all that pressure and anxiety, gone. But here's the kicker. You can't just opt out entirely. By making them just taste it, you're making sure they're constantly, but gently, being exposed to new flavors and textures. It builds up their palate over time, without a fight. So much of French family life revolves around this really strict daily rhythm. There are 4 meals. That's it. 4. You've got breakfast, lunch, that one single afternoon snack around 4 p.m. called le goûter, which is often something sweet, like a little pastry or some chocolate, and then dinner. And the crucial part? Absolutely no snacking in between meals. None. And the effect of this is huge. You just don't see French parents lugging around giant bags of crackers and juice boxes just in case. Because they've cut out all that constant grazing, kids actually show up to the table genuinely hungry. And guess what happens when you're hungry? You're way more open to eating what's put in front of you. So here's the practical guide, right? This is how you raise an adventurous eater. It's not magic, it's pure strategy. First, they often serve vegetables as an appetizer, right when kids are the most hungry and the least picky. Smart. And if a kid doesn't like a new food, they don't just give up. They might reintroduce it like 7 to 15 times in different ways. And maybe the biggest rule of all, there's no kid food. From the very beginning, from their first solid foods, babies are eating pureed versions of what the adults are having. It teaches them that the family meal is the meal, period. And look, this isn't just a bunch of cute, charming cultural habits. This whole structured approach to food has a real measurable impact. I mean, it actually shows up in the national health statistics. And the difference? Well, it's pretty stark. I mean, just look at this contrast. You've got France and Japan, 2 countries with totally different food, right? But they both have these structured food cultures, and they both have pretty low rates of childhood obesity. Now, compare that to the United States where, snacking is constant and kid food is a massive industry. The numbers are just so much higher. It really suggests these cultural systems have a huge, measurable effect on health. But this whole philosophy, this training for self-regulation, it's not just about food. It actually starts way earlier, almost from birth, and it goes way beyond the dinner table. So let's shift gears and look at the secret to self-soothing. And that whole journey starts in the nursery, with sleep. Okay, so a huge principle here is something called la pause, which just means the pause. When a baby cries in the middle of the night, French parents don't just immediately rush in. They pause. They wait and observe for just a moment. The whole idea is to see if the baby can figure out how to self-soothe and connect their own sleep cycles. And a lot of them learn to do this by just 2 or 3 months old. It's incredible. Now, it's really, really important to get this straight. This is not the cry it out method. That's totally different. Cry it out often means leaving a kid to cry for a set period of time, no matter what. La Paz is all about measured intervention. Parents are listening like super intently to learn the difference between the normal little grunts and whimpers a baby makes when they're connecting sleep cycles and a real cry of distress. It's all about observing and understanding before you jump in.
So this foundation of self-regulation they build early on, through both sleep and food, it becomes this incredible launchpad for building brave, independent kids. And again, this isn't just left to chance. It's a very deliberate, step-by-step process of building resilience as they get older.
And you can see this really clear progression of trust and responsibility. So by age 3, kids are expected to be able to dress themselves. A little after that, they're going to birthday parties without their parents staying. Yeah, really. And then, get this, by 1st grade, it's pretty normal for them to go on an 8-day school trip away from home. They systematically build up that resilience by giving them more and more autonomy as they grow. And that independence is backed up by having really clear boundaries inside the home, too. There's a very distinct line between adult time and child time. So evenings, that's for the adults after the kids are in bed. Toys, they're generally kept in the kids' room, not scattered all over the living room. All of this teaches children respect for space and this really crucial idea that their parents are actual individuals with their own lives, not just on-demand service providers 24/7. So when you take all these different pieces, the food rules, a sleep training, the slow build of independence, you realize they're all tied together by one core philosophy. It's this idea of freedom inside a framework. It's this beautiful balance between discipline and liberty. It's called le cadre, which literally means the framework. And the best way to think about it is like a sturdy fence around a huge open field. That fence gives you really firm, consistent boundaries. Those are the non-negotiable rules. But inside that framework, the child has tons of freedom to play, to explore, to be themselves. The idea is that kids aren't coddled. They're seen as capable people who actually need the structure to really thrive. And by setting these clear limits and avoiding, overindulging them, this framework helps prevent what some people call the child king phenomenon. The end goal here isn't just to have a well-behaved kid. It's to raise a well-adjusted adult, someone who can self-regulate and just calmly function as part of society. And this quote just nails the ultimate vision perfectly. The whole point is to raise people who do not behave as the center of the universe, but also do not disappear inside themselves. It's about raising a person who is both self-assured and socially aware. Someone who understands their place in the world without needing to be the center of it all the time. It's a really compelling balance, isn't it? And it kind of leaves us with a big question. What can we learn from a framework that values both the individual and the community so clearly?